Chapter 17 and 18. Chapter 17 is titled, It's All Starting Over. And that implies that, I don't know, maybe it implies that they're kind of getting a chance at new life, that something that had happened previously is happening all over again. We don't know. So we start with kind of being reminded that Jean's family is kind of being torn asunder. Oh, excuse me. And people are leaving Camp Manzanar to go back to real life. And so the chapter opens with things kind of getting neglected. I mean, look at the second paragraph here. Cultivation stopped. Crops in the ground were harvested as they ripened. Nothing new was planted. They began to auction off the tractors, the trucks, and tools. So kind of it's becoming a little bit more desolate and run down. And as people are leaving, things aren't really getting taken care of. And the camp is set to close on December 1st, as we see here on page 121. And everyone is now being forced to leave. And so Papa, he decided, as it says here on page 121, that he would stay as long as he could because he's starting to realize the reality of what life outside has for him. Like, look at page 121. Outside, he had no job to go back to. A California law passed in 1943 made it illegal now for an Issei to hold commercial fishing licenses. So he's probably lost his home. He's lost the job that he was good at. And he probably knew that his boats and nets were gone, confiscated or stolen. And at Manzanar, he had shelter that was free, or at least paid for by the government. And he had his family, at least his wife and children. And so obviously he doesn't want to leave, right? And so we see Papa and Mama continuing to argue more. We see them, like Mama and Papa, it seems like they're making decisions that are mutual. They're both making decisions together, but Papa is like getting angry. He's yelling at Mama. He's saying like, "This is all your fault," like on page 122. And maybe he's like we saw earlier, he's realizing he's losing his sense of control. And just as he let out his anger, or he let out his lack of control through his anger, it seems like he's kind of doing that here as well. Um, and what's question number 3? Why doesn't Mama tell Papa that his plan for a Japanese American housing project is foolish? Yeah, so they talk and they kind of have a plan, or at least Papa has this plan, right? He has this plan that um, he'll do something to help get out, but Mama says something twice that was very interesting. It's like 1942 all over again. She says this when they're thinking about going out, and Japanese people who are getting out of Camp Manzanar, they have no place to go. So the governments and people are just being put into trailers and Quonset houses, like these kind of portable houses. And then she says it again on bottom of page 123. Everything is like 1942. It is all starting over because the camp is starting to get run down and things that need to get done aren't happening and services are lacking. And so, yeah, I like how it says on page 124 as well, there were signals of neglect as if the camp were slowly, deliberately disintegrating in order to comply with the administration's deadline. And I feel like that's symbolic as well of just kind of the crumbling um, of their reality in Manzanar. And then so on page 125, we get to the point of the cooperative, and Papa is saying, yes, we're going to send out a letter that the government must provide low interest loans for families returning from the camps. They have to help us get a new start. And it's kind of like reparations, right? That he's basically demanding that the government, recompenses the 3 years they lost being in Manzanar. And Mama is she says on page 126, do you think the government will do anything? And instead of that's kind of her way of saying like, well, I don't think this will succeed, but with Papa's pride and Mama knowing how Papa is, she probably said it this way to assuage his anger. And then in August 6th, 1945, we know that that was the bombing of Hiroshima. And if you recall earlier, we know that that's where Papa's from. Papa's family is all from Hiroshima. And so, it's just interesting because on page 127, it's a happy event that they dropped the bomb because now the war's over and Japanese people are no longer the enemy. But on page 127, look at Papa. Here he sat, a man without prospects, perhaps now without even a family in Japan to confirm his own history, 58 years old, and his children scattered across the land. So obviously he wants to stay in Manzanar as much as he can. I mean, they bombed his hometown. And so he's deciding, he's just kind of, it seems like as he reads the papers, it says here on page 127, he studied the changeless peaks. So it's just kind of like he's just staring off and just, it's just sad. And then in chapter 18, it's a little excursion again. And this is Woody, his experience in Hiroshima, going back to his father's homeland. And he's um, there to do some military duty to stop the black markets. And so he's there, but he's also visiting his family. And we get this introduction scene where he's talking to Toyo, who's his aunt. And look at what Toyo shows him. She shows him a grave where his father was buried in 1913. And as a reader, you're like, what? Wait, what? And you realize, oh yeah, he fled his family. And so Woody says, I told you he lives in California now, but to Toyo in 1913, he had been gone for 9 years with no word. To the family in Japan, he was dead. This is his gravestone. And it's very sad. It's like, yeah, that's right. He abandoned his family in Japan. However, it's good. There's good stuff. Toyo shows him the graveyard because she wanted to show, I show it to you so you will know how much he mattered to us here, so you will know how happy you have made me bringing this news that he still lives. This happiness I feel now erases all this war has put us through. That's crazy because isn't that what Papa was really um, trying to attain? Um, that was what Papa wanted his whole life. He wanted to bring honor to his family, and in a way, Woody is able to fulfill that by coming back to Hiroshima. And it's just this beautiful picture of honor and reconciliation and um, kind of the ability to move on and move beyond. And he visits his family. He brings them sugar because sugar is such a high demand in the town, and he was kind of afraid of how he would be received by his father's family because he's an American. He thought that maybe they would think he's a traitor or something. But look at how they treat them in page 131. They show him the house, which is this beautiful, ginormous house, and it kind of validates what Papa had said about his life in Japan. They prepare a special meal for him. They give him, they bring it out on a fine set of porcelain. They give him precious pre-war sake, which is an alcoholic drink, and they let him sleep in the most luxurious bed, right? And he even says how royally they treat him, how pleased Papa will be to hear of this reception and to know Toyo is well, and how proud he'll be when Woody returns to tell what a family they come from in Japan. Woody himself is proud already. That's pretty amazing. Again, as I said, how he was able to bring honor to the family. And in a way, that kind of shows a lot of how Woody is like his father. But he also realizes on page 133, for the first time, he understands that crazy pride, the pride that comes from his father and his family. He's understanding now that pride, and he's realizing that he has that as well. And with his fingertips still touching his creases, he marvels at this resemblance to Papa's eyes and his own. He'd never seen it before, never thought to compare himself with Papa, never dared. Now he knows what he should have said while Toyo knelt there, and it was a desire to know more about his dad. And so, Woody realizes he is his father's son in so many ways, and he's recognizing his family heritage and connection. And it's just this beautiful picture of their family.